Are you eating what you've been told is healthy, yet your energy is fading, your weight feels harder to manage, and aging seems to be accelerating anyway? Here's a surprising truth. Many seniors who live the longest, healthiest lives are not following the diet advice most people think they are. They're not obsessing over low-fat labels, calorie counting, or expensive superfood powders, and they're certainly not eating the way modern nutrition headlines suggest. What they are doing is far more simple and far more powerful. Today I want to talk about a small group of everyday foods that, when eaten consistently, help people live well into their 90s and even past 100, with better mobility, sharper minds, and far less chronic disease. And what's fascinating is that these foods work not because they're trendy, but because they directly support the body's deep biological defense systems. Here's what's really going on inside your body. As we age, the biggest threat to longevity isn't cholesterol, calories, or even genetics. It's the slow breakdown of metabolic communication between your gut, your liver, your immune system, and your blood vessels. When those systems stop talking to each other clearly, inflammation rises, insulin becomes chaotic, muscle wastes away, and the body slowly loses its ability to repair itself. Longevity isn't about avoiding death. It's about supporting repair. And this is where most people, and even many doctors, get it wrong. They focus on symptoms: high blood sugar, high blood pressure, joint pain, brain fog, but those are downstream effects. The real root cause is the loss of metabolic resilience, the body's ability to switch fuels efficiently, control inflammation naturally, and activate its built-in repair programs. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body as a house with a built-in maintenance crew. When you're young, that crew works around the clock, fixing cracks, clearing debris, and upgrading systems. But as you age, if the crew is constantly overwhelmed by poor food signals, excess insulin, and chronic inflammation, repairs slow down. Damage accumulates. Systems fail. The foods we'll talk about today don't just feed you. They signal your maintenance crew to wake up. They activate pathways tied to longevity, including blood vessel growth control, immune balance, gut integrity, and fat-burning metabolism. These are the same biological systems we see preserved in the world's longest living populations. And here's the key point. This is not about restriction. It's about strategic nourishment. In this video, I'll show you why eating less variety can sometimes improve longevity, how certain everyday foods lower inflammation while improving insulin sensitivity, why timing matters just as much as what you eat, and how seniors can use food as a daily longevity tool without medications. If you've ever felt confused by conflicting nutrition advice, stay with me. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly what to eat every day and why your body responds so powerfully when you do. Most people think longevity is about eating less food and shrinking the body. But what the research actually shows is that long life comes from better metabolic signaling, not chronic restriction. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every time you eat, food doesn't just provide calories, it sends instructions. These instructions tell your cells whether to store fat, burn fat, build muscle, repair tissue, or trigger inflammation. Over time, the quality of these signals matters far more than the quantity of food itself. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your metabolism like a traffic control system. When signals are clear, traffic flows smoothly, energy is produced efficiently, inflammation stays low, and repair crews do their work. But when signals are noisy, too much sugar, too many refined carbs, constant snacking, traffic jams form. Insulin stays elevated. Fat burning shuts down. Repair slows. This is why many seniors who eat very little still struggle with weight gain, fatigue, and chronic disease. They're under-eating calories, but overloading insulin. One of the most consistent findings in longevity research is that centenarians maintain low baseline insulin levels while still eating satisfying meals. This protects blood vessels, preserves brain function, and reduces inflammatory aging, what scientists call inflammaging. And here's the surprising part. The foods that support this are not exotic. They're everyday foods that stabilize blood sugar, support the liver, and feed the gut. The first category is low glycemic, fiber-rich plants eaten daily. Foods like leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, onions, garlic, berries, and legumes don't spike glucose aggressively. Instead, they slow digestion, reduce insulin demand, and feed beneficial gut bacteria. These bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate, which directly reduce inflammation and improve insulin sensitivity. What the research shows is that populations with the highest fiber intake have dramatically lower rates of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and cognitive decline, even when total calories are similar. Here's the practical protocol. For seniors, aim to include at least 2 fist-sized servings of fiber-rich plants at every meal. Not juices, not smoothies, whole chewable plants. Second, longevity-focused eaters avoid constant grazing. Every time you eat, insulin rises. If insulin never has a chance to come down, fat burning and cellular cleanup, known as autophagy, never fully activate. This is one reason centenarians often eat within a defined eating window, even if they don't call it fasting. A simple tool. Finish dinner at least 3 hours before bedtime and avoid late-night snacks. This alone can improve overnight fat metabolism and growth hormone release, both critical for aging well. Third, these individuals prioritize metabolic calm, not excitement. Ultra-processed foods hijack the brain and spike insulin repeatedly. Even healthy snacks can quietly sabotage metabolic health if eaten too often. Instead, longevity diets are boring in the best possible way. Simple meals, repeated foods, stable routines. And this matters because metabolic predictability reduces cortisol. High cortisol accelerates muscle loss, bone loss, and belly fat, all markers of aging. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day to help you use science, not hype, to age with strength and clarity. So the first big takeaway is this. Longevity isn't about shrinking yourself. It's about lowering metabolic noise. When insulin is calm, inflammation drops. When inflammation drops, repair increases. And when repair increases, aging slows naturally. One of the most damaging myths in aging nutrition is the idea that seniors should eat less protein to live longer. This misunderstanding has quietly accelerated frailty, weakness, insulin resistance, and even cognitive decline in millions of older adults. Here's what's really going on inside your body. As you age, your muscles become less responsive to protein, a phenomenon known as anabolic resistance. In simple terms, the same amount of protein that built muscle at 40 barely sends a signal at 70. If protein intake drops at the same time, the body begins breaking down muscle tissue just to survive. And muscle is not just for movement. Muscle is a metabolic organ. It acts like a sponge for glucose, pulling sugar out of the bloodstream without requiring much insulin. When muscle mass declines, blood sugar rises, insulin rises, inflammation rises, and aging accelerates. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine muscle as a large warehouse that stores excess fuel safely. When the warehouse shrinks, fuel spills into the streets. That fuel becomes visceral fat, fatty liver, and chronic inflammation. This is why sarcopenia, age-related muscle loss, is one of the strongest predictors of mortality in seniors. Now here's where people get confused. They hear about longevity studies showing that excess protein may accelerate aging pathways like mTOR. That's true in younger adults with abundant muscle and high calorie intake. But in seniors, the risk flips. What the research shows is that low protein intake after age 60 is associated with higher mortality, weaker immunity, and faster physical decline. Protein becomes protective, not harmful. The key is quality, distribution, and timing. Longevity-focused seniors consistently eat adequate protein daily, spread evenly across meals, instead of concentrating it all at dinner. The most studied protein threshold for muscle preservation in older adults is about 25 to 35 grams of high-quality protein per meal. This amount provides enough leucine, the amino acid that triggers muscle-building signals, to overcome anabolic resistance. Here's a practical visual. If you draw a line on a whiteboard representing muscle signal activation, small protein meals barely move the needle. But once you cross the threshold, the signal turns on. Anything below that threshold is metabolically inefficient. Now let's talk about protein sources. The longest living populations don't rely on ultra-processed protein bars or powders. They emphasize eggs, fish and seafood, fermented dairy like yogurt or kefir, legumes paired with vegetables, occasional poultry or pasture-raised meat. Fish deserves special attention. It provides protein plus omega-3 fats, which reduce muscle inflammation and improve insulin sensitivity. This combination protects both muscle and blood vessels, a double longevity benefit. Here's a simple daily protocol for seniors. At breakfast or lunch, include a clear protein anchor, eggs, Greek yogurt, or fish, instead of just toast or cereal. This stabilizes blood sugar for the entire day and reduces cravings later. Also important, protein should be paired with movement. Muscle becomes more responsive to protein after even light resistance exercise. That could be bodyweight squats, resistance bands, or carrying groceries. You don't need intense workouts. You need consistent signals. And if this section is resonating, consider subscribing. I share practical, science-based strategies like this every day to help you stay strong and metabolically resilient as you age. So remember this, muscle is not vanity. Muscle is longevity insurance. Protect it with enough protein, eaten consistently, paired with gentle strength, and you protect your metabolism, your independence, and your lifespan. Next, we'll talk about fats and why the right fats every day quietly protect your arteries, brain, and immune system, while the wrong ones accelerate aging even if your cholesterol looks normal. Fat has been misunderstood for decades, especially when it comes to aging. Many seniors were taught to fear fat, to choose low-fat foods, avoid oils, and believe that fat automatically clogs arteries. But when we look closely at long-lived populations, we see the opposite pattern. They eat fat every day, just not the kind most people are eating. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your brain, hormones, immune cells, and cell membranes are literally made of fat. As you age, if the fats you consume are unstable or inflammatory, your cells become fragile. Communication between cells breaks down. Inflammation rises. Blood vessels stiffen. But when the fats you eat are stable and anti-inflammatory, they act like protective insulation for your biology. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine every cell in your body is a soap bubble. The quality of the fat you eat determines how strong that bubble is. Poor fats create thin, leaky bubbles that pop under stress. Good fats create thick, flexible bubbles that resist damage and repair quickly. This matters enormously for seniors. One of the strongest predictors of longevity is vascular flexibility. How well blood vessels expand, contract, and deliver oxygen. Certain fats directly improve this function by calming inflammation and improving nitric oxide signaling. What the research shows is that people who consume higher amounts of monounsaturated fats and omega-3 fats have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and overall mortality, even when total fat intake is higher. The key fats that show up again and again in longevity research are extra virgin olive oil, fatty fish like sardines, salmon, and mackerel, nuts, especially walnuts and almonds, avocados. These fats reduce inflammatory markers like CRP, improve insulin sensitivity, and support the lining of blood vessels, the endothelium. Now, here's the critical distinction. It's not fat itself that accelerates aging. It's oxidized and industrial fats. Seed oils that have been repeatedly heated, ultra-processed foods, fried snacks, and packaged baked goods contain unstable fats that break down into inflammatory compounds. These damage mitochondria, your cellular energy factories, and quietly accelerate aging at the cellular level. Even if cholesterol numbers look acceptable, this kind of fat intake creates internal stress that labs don't always capture. Here's a simple daily protocol seniors can follow. Use olive oil as your primary added fat, especially for vegetables and proteins. Aim for 1 to 2 tablespoons per day. This alone has been associated with reduced all-cause mortality in large population studies. Eat fatty fish 2 to 4 times per week. If that's not realistic, a high-quality omega-3 supplement can help, but food always comes first. Avoid reheated oils and minimize packaged foods with long ingredient lists. Longevity diets are short on labels and long on simplicity. Another important point, fat helps stabilize blood sugar. When meals contain healthy fat, glucose enters the bloodstream more slowly. Insulin spikes less aggressively. This protects the pancreas and reduces fat storage, especially around the liver and abdomen. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day to help you cut through nutrition confusion and use food strategically for long-term health. So the takeaway here is simple but powerful. The right fats don't make you old. They protect you from aging. They strengthen cells, calm inflammation, support the brain, and keep blood vessels young. If there's one system that quietly determines how well you age after 60, it's your gut. Not just digestion, but the ecosystem of microbes living inside it. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your gut microbiome acts like a control center that constantly communicates with your immune system, your liver, your brain, and even your hormones. As long as this ecosystem is diverse and well-fed, inflammation stays low, insulin works efficiently, and your immune system stays sharp. But as we age, that diversity tends to shrink, especially if diet becomes more processed, repetitive, or low in fiber. And when microbial diversity drops, aging speeds up. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your gut like a garden. When many different plants are growing, weeds struggle to take over. But when diversity disappears, invasive species dominate. In the gut, those weeds are inflammatory microbes that damage the gut lining, leak toxins into the bloodstream, and overstimulate the immune system. This process is known as leaky gut, and it's strongly linked to insulin resistance, autoimmune conditions, brain fog, and accelerated aging. One of the most important discoveries in longevity science is that long-lived individuals maintain a gut microbiome that continues producing short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate. These compounds act like anti-inflammatory signals that protect the colon, strengthen the gut barrier, and improve insulin sensitivity throughout the body. And here's the key point. Your body does not make butyrate, your microbes do. So the question becomes, what do you need to eat every day to feed the right microbes? The answer is not probiotics alone. Longevity diets are rich in prebiotic fibers, the foods that beneficial bacteria actually eat. These include onions, garlic, leeks, and shallots, asparagus and artichokes, beans and lentils, oats, barley, and resistant starches, slightly green bananas, cooked and cooled potatoes or rice. These foods don't spike blood sugar aggressively when eaten in whole form. Instead, they pass into the colon and get fermented, producing compounds that calm inflammation and support metabolic health. What the research shows is that people who consume a wide variety of plant fibers, not just vegetables, but legumes and whole grains, have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cognitive decline, even in advanced age. Now here's where many seniors unintentionally make a mistake. They simplify their diet too much. They eat the same few foods every day, often low fiber and easy to chew, and unknowingly starve their microbiome. Over time, this reduces microbial diversity and weakens immune resilience. A powerful but simple longevity strategy is fiber diversity, not fiber overload. Aim for 20-30 different plant foods per week. That sounds like a lot, but herbs, spices, nuts, seeds, and vegetables all count. You don't need large portions, just variety. Another critical tool is fermented foods. Foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, and fermented vegetables introduce beneficial bacteria and help train the immune system to respond appropriately instead of overreacting. A small serving daily is enough. This isn't about flooding the gut. It's about gentle, consistent signaling. One more important insight. Gut health protects the brain. The gut produces neurotransmitters and communicates directly with the nervous system. A healthier microbiome is associated with lower rates of depression, anxiety, and neurodegenerative disease. So the takeaway here is this. A younger gut creates a younger immune system. A younger immune system creates a younger body. Feed your microbes daily with diverse plants and gentle fermentation, and you support one of the most powerful longevity systems you have. Most people focus entirely on what they eat. But after age 60, when you eat becomes just as important, sometimes even more important, for longevity, energy, and metabolic health. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your metabolism follows a circadian rhythm. Hormones like insulin, cortisol, growth hormone, and melatonin rise and fall on a predictable daily schedule. When eating is aligned with that rhythm, the body burns fat more efficiently, repairs tissue overnight, and keeps inflammation under control. When eating is mistimed, those systems fall out of sync, even if food quality is good. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body as a factory with day and night shifts. The day shift handles digestion, movement, and energy production. The night shift handles repair, cleanup, and cellular recycling. If food keeps arriving late at night, the cleanup crew can't do its job. That cleanup process is called autophagy, the body's way of removing damaged cells and recycling old components. Autophagy is strongly associated with longevity, cancer protection, and brain health. The good news is that you don't need extreme fasting to activate it. In long-lived populations, eating tends to follow a consistent daily rhythm: meals earlier in the day, fewer late-night calories, and predictable eating windows. What the research shows is that even a 12-14-hour overnight fasting window improves insulin sensitivity, reduces inflammation, and supports fat metabolism, especially in older adults. Here's a practical, senior-friendly protocol. Finish your last meal 3-4 hours before bedtime. This allows insulin to fall and growth hormone to rise during sleep, critical for muscle repair, fat burning, and brain health. Aim to eat your first meal at roughly the same time each morning, even if it's modest. Consistency trains your metabolic clock. Now let's talk about breakfast, another misunderstood area. Skipping breakfast entirely can work for some people, but for many seniors, it increases cortisol, weakens muscle preservation, and leads to overeating later. What matters more than skipping is protein anchoring. A protein-rich breakfast or late morning meal stabilizes blood sugar and improves appetite control for the rest of the day. Examples include eggs with vegetables, Greek yogurt with nuts and berries, fish and greens, cottage cheese with seeds. These meals send a powerful fed but stable signal to the body, not a sugar spike. Another timing mistake is constant snacking. Every snack restarts digestion and raises insulin. For seniors, this prevents fat burning and keeps the liver in storage mode. A simple rule: eat 2 to 3 clear meals per day, with no grazing in between. Water, tea, or black coffee are fine between meals. This pattern reduces metabolic noise and gives the body space to shift into repair mode. Now, here's an important reassurance. You do not need to be hungry all the time. You do not need to count hours obsessively. Longevity diets are predictable, not stressful. Stress itself raises cortisol and accelerates aging. If this timing approach is helpful, consider subscribing. I share simple, sustainable strategies like this every day to help you align your biology with long-term health. So remember this. Longevity isn't about starving the body. It's about giving it time to repair. When eating is aligned with your internal clock, insulin calms, inflammation drops, and your body does what it was designed to do: maintain itself. One of the most remarkable things about the human body is that it already contains powerful anti-cancer and repair systems. Longevity is not about adding something artificial. It's about activating what's already there. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your immune system is constantly scanning for damaged, dysfunctional, or potentially cancerous cells. At the same time, your body regulates blood vessel growth, inflammation, and tissue repair through tightly controlled biological pathways. When these systems function well, abnormal cells are removed before they become disease. As we age, these protective systems weaken, not because they disappear, but because they stop receiving the right signals. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body as a city with a highly trained security and maintenance team. In youth, that team is alert and well coordinated. But over time, if communication breaks down, problems go unnoticed. Repairs slow. Small issues become big ones. Certain foods restore that communication. What the research shows is that specific compounds in everyday foods activate pathways involved in immune surveillance, inflammation control, and blood vessel regulation, all linked to longevity. One of the most important systems is angiogenesis control, the body's ability to regulate the growth of new blood vessels. Healthy angiogenesis supports healing and circulation. Uncontrolled angiogenesis feeds tumors and chronic inflammation. Foods that help normalize this balance appear consistently in long-lived populations. These include green tea, berries, tomatoes, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cabbage, soy foods such as tofu and edamame, olive oil. These foods contain bioactive compounds, polyphenols, flavonoids, and carotenoids that help regulate angiogenesis and calm inflammatory signaling. Another critical pathway is immune modulation. As we age, the immune system can become overactive in some areas and underactive in others. This imbalance drives autoimmune disease, chronic inflammation, and poor cancer surveillance. Fermented foods, omega-3 fats, mushrooms, and colorful vegetables help retrain immune cells to respond appropriately, strong when needed, quiet when not. Now here's the empowering part. You don't need large doses or supplements to benefit. What longevity research consistently shows is that daily exposure matters more than intensity. Small amounts, eaten regularly, create cumulative protective effects. A handful of berries, a cup of green tea, a serving of cruciferous vegetables, olive oil on vegetables, fish a few times per week. These aren't dramatic interventions, but biologically, they're profound. Another overlooked mechanism is mitochondrial protection. Mitochondria generate energy, but they're also vulnerable to oxidative damage. Antioxidant-rich foods don't just